So, good morning, my viewers. My name is Tess, and welcome to my channel. A few weeks ago, I talked about the ADHD, and I highlighted a few things concerning the condition. Some of you people asked me questions that I have no answers to because I'm not a medical profession and I have no specialty in these conditions. So I decided to invite someone who is well versed and also who specializes in the field of developmental conditions. So without further ado, I will ask her to introduce herself.
Okay, hi Tess.
Yeah, hello.
So my name is Zawadi Kimari. I am a psychologist by profession. So I'm not just specialized in ADHD, I do just all manners of mental conditions and illnesses as well. And when I heard about this particular opportunity, I was thrilled to be part of it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, so maybe we can start with the most basic question. What is ADHD?
Okay, so ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, which is a neurodevelopmental condition. And by neurodevelopmental, what that means is that the brain develops a little bit slower than that of a neurotypical. So neurotypical would be someone who doesn't have any conditions whatsoever. It occurs within the neurodevelopmental spectrum where also autism lies, pervasive developmental condition lies within that whole range of conditions. Now, ADHD comes about in three main presentations. I'm going to use the word presentations, but in the book you'll find it as types. So the presentations are the internal presentations and the external presentations. So internal presentations are the inattentive type where all of the hyperactivity occurs internally. So this is someone who would have so many thoughts happening at the same time. They're very inattentive. They zone out of conversations very easily. They feel a little bit too deeply. They are easily forgetful. They are easily frustrated. And then we have the external presentation. So those would be the ones that would be fastest to be diagnosed, because this is a child who would be pretty much hyperactive and blurting out answers in class, can't wait to take a turn, can't wait for an instruction to be made before they go ahead and do it, very poor organization skills, not able to do one thing and follow through with the next activity and the next activity. And now the third one is a combination of both. So this is someone who has both the inattentive type as well as the hyperactive/impulsive type all together.
Okay. And what causes ADHD? As in, sometimes we say malaria is caused by. Is there a known cause to ADHD? And if there is there anything that a parent can do to prevent the happening of ADHD?
Now, the answer to your question is okay. I'm going to start off is there a cause for ADHD? Well, it's not. We don't have a discernible cause where we can say that, the way we say HIV is caused by this particular virus, or malaria is caused by this particular thing. There is a number of factors. A number of pointers that have been noted is, first of all, genetic predisposition, and then there's now the heterogenic predisposition. So with genetic predisposition, it would be hereditary in nature, such that if I have ADHD or if my family there's history of ADHD, then in that event there's a likelihood that my child would also get ADHD. But then on the other hand, when I'm talking about heterogens, I'm talking about all of these tiny little things that when a mother is exposed to when they're pregnant or just about to be pregnant, even a man when they're in that range or they're about to get someone pregnant or something like that, they then predispose the unborn child to ADHD. And these heterogens, I mean things like CLED, matters to do with alcohol, use of alcohol, use of cigarettes, use of cannabis. If the mother experiences a depressive illness of sorts, very severe kind, then that is bound to affect the unborn child.
Yeah.
If the mother also has some levels of poor nutrition, then that can lead to low birth weight, and low birth weight is a risk factor for ADHD. If the mother loses consciousness or is sick from things like diabetes or low iron and things like that, then you see all of these tiny complications can result in neurodevelopmental situations going on for the unborn child, and in turn result to ADHD type symptomatology once the child is born.
Right. And you mentioned that even the father can contribute to the child having ADHD. So basically, if they are planning to have a child, the father should also come on board in making sure that what they are doing, lifestyle and dietary, is healthy.
For instance, we usually belabor the mother that you cannot drink because you're pregnant, you cannot smoke because you're pregnant, don't do that. But if the dad is smoking in the room, then the child becomes a secondary smoker. If the mother is pregnant, then by virtue of the fact that they are sharing this space, then the mother also is exposed to nicotine and everything it comes with. So some of these things can predispose a child. For example, if I was the mommy and I don't smoke, I don't do anything, but you're my sister, we live together, you smoke, you eat miraa in the house, there's all of these fumes that come towards me and my unborn child, and then that can put both myself and my baby at risk.
Okay. So you parents had sent in some questions, and I wanted us to look at them, and the Zawadi can help us answer some of those questions, so we'll read them out. So one of you asked, how can one tell precisely if a child has ADHD or autism?
Okay, so first of all, both of these conditions, you'll notice when I was talking about what is ADHD, I said ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Autism is also a neurodevelopmental disorder. And sometimes the symptoms look very, very similar, especially if you have an autistic child who, autism is it occurs in a spectrum, very wide spectrum, and there are those who have very mild symptoms and those who have more severe symptoms. So those who have mild symptoms may mimic any other condition. And the thing about all of these neurodevelopmental disorders is that the symptoms would present themselves, if I may use that word, they present themselves louder when you're put in an environment that is more stressful for you, so much so that it pushes strain on your capabilities. So you could have an autistic child with very mild symptoms of autism, but is very hyperactive. They don't have very good social skills, they don't have friends. They're having a bit of issues with schoolwork and think, okay, so they say that is ADHD, so maybe my child doesn't have autism, maybe my child has ADHD. So there's very clear-cut difference between the two. ADHD is an executive function kind of disorder, and I'm just going to break it down and put it across this way. Executive function is to do with all matters to do with planning and execution and organization of thoughts, feelings, and in turn action. So a person who has ADHD will have issues planning an action, they'll have issues with homework, they'll have issues with concentration, most especially if that thing requires sustained mental effort. So if say this is mathematics and then it's those 844 mathematics, the ones that I think some of us did, where you had to do carry one, borrow one, remainder,
dy over dx.
dx dy,
Yeah.
g square, and then there's a 2 on top. Now, for someone who has ADHD, the thing would be that they could easily forget that it's pi r squared. So they will write the formula pi r squared, but then when they're doing the calculation, it's pi r. And that come to that was there on top, it's just, if you know, like it just ilipotea tu mahali, yeah. And because it just, you know, you forgot it for a split second, then that means that you get the answer wrong. Doesn't mean that you're stupid, or you're silly, or you're lazy, but you'd come off that way. Matters to do with organization skills. So that means that in their environment there is order in the chaos. You know, like there's order in the mess. So this is a person who will come home with one sock missing, and you know, come home with the bag, but some of the books are missing, some of the pens are missing. You keep on replacing things every single day. They may have issues sitting still for way too long. So if it's a church service, they'd have to go to the bathroom like 50 times, because I mean, hey, church services can be a bit too long, you know, when you're restricted there. They may also have a bit of low frustration tolerance levels. So anything that's frustrating, it just causes them to have a bit of a meltdown, and that could be either, you know, an emotional kind of reaction or an anger kind of reaction. So this is all to do with the executive function, which again I will emphasize, it helps us regulate our thoughts, our emotions, and in turn our actions. Now with autism, it affects two primary avenues, and here I'm going to just jump into them. So there's the social aspects. So a person who has autism may have difficulty with communication, and in the more severe in the more severe presentations of autism, that means that even talking may be a bit difficult for them. They will communicate with you, but they may lack the words to communicate with you. And if you do not understand their language, you will be very frustrated. For some, it's not that they cannot communicate, but they can't get the words out. So they do what is called echolalia. So they repeat a word severally and severally. For some, they do communicate, but then the words just don't come out straight. With mild forms, there's good communication, but then it may not really fully describe what this person is actually feeling or thinking. Then there's the part of the behavioral, which is now to do with restricted and repetitive behavioral patterns. So this is a person who would have issues when you touch their things and mess up their order, and why did you just do that? And they would have high levels of frustration about it. And it's difficult to soothe themselves, so they end up having this repetitive self-soothing behavior, like banging the head, and it's not that there's anything particularly besides. Very normal for autism. It's an aspect of self-soothing or communication of frustration. They would be having levels of hypersensitivity to sensory stimulus. So like this room is very well lit, but it may be a bit too much light, too much brightness for someone who's autistic. Your clothes, those of us who have tags, I don't mind having my tag on my clothes, but for someone who has autism, that may be very irritating, and they'll just want it off. And because they can't communicate it to you really well, then you'll find them wearing the clothes inside out, or just tagging it off, and you don't understand why that is so. Now, the thing about someone who has ADHD, they will not have that. They will speak and tell you that this thing is just too much for me. With children who have autism, there's also the aspect of delays in developmental milestones. From around the time of 9 to 18 months, they're about to start to notice that, okay, my child is not really hitting these developmental milestones the way it's, suggested in baby clinic. But then for a child who has ADHD, they hit the milestones on the spot, sometimes even earlier than a neurotypical kid. Some of them may have some delays, but they pick up really fast, and you'd gloss over that whole space. Yeah.
So and the next question was, can the two occur together? Can autism and ADHD occur together?